Jordan Peterson is a very influential figure and has a very large following. Currently has over 8.6 million followers on Instagram, 8.3 million subscribers on YouTube, as well as Twitter and Facebook. And today in this video, we are going to be reacting to this debate that goes with a lot of different topics that are currently highly discussed in today's society. So let's get into it. Here we go.
Jordan Peterson, you've said that men need to, quote, grow the hell up. Tell me why.
Well, because there's nothing uglier than an old infant. There's nothing good about it. People who don't grow up don't find the sort of meaning in their life that sustains them through difficult times, and they are certain to encounter difficult times. And they're left bitter and resentful and without purpose and adrift and hostile.
So something I can say being a man, and I think this even goes for women as well, is that when you are babied, especially as a young child and growing up into your later years, I didn't mean so much as a young child, but what I'm trying to get at is when you don't face reality, when you don't face, your consequences, when you don't go through tough times, you're not going to be ready for real life situations. And I think what he is alluding to is that there are a lot of people that honestly have not really seen reality or face it, or really just neglect what reality is like. And I'm interested to see how he does in this debate, because of the fact that it already seems like she is coming after him just based off those few words. And he's very composed, so this is interesting.
And resentful and vengeful and arrogant and deceitful and of no use to themselves and of no use to anyone else, and no partner for a woman, and there's nothing in it that's good.
So you say, I mean, that sounds pretty bad. You're saying
It's
there's a
bad.
crisis of masculinity? I mean, what do you do about it?
You help people understand why it's necessary and important for them to grow up and adopt responsibility. Why that isn't a shake your finger and get your act together sort of thing. Why it's more like a delineation of the kind of destiny that makes life worth living. I've been telling young men.
I think again, this is another great point, is like when you're whether it's like you're in high school, let's use high school for example. If you don't have responsibility, let's just say, making payments on a car is a great example. Those are things that you are going to have to do later on in life. And without that responsibility of growing up and having real life things that you have to deal with, you're not going to be ready. And when it hits you, it's going to be very hard. I personally had friends that never knew things about insurance, didn't know anything about car payments, never had a credit card before. These are things that, at a certain point you have to realize like that this is a part of growing up. This is a part of being older. And we honestly should just be people that, strive to be better, to learn more. We shouldn't always just be, playing video games and neglecting, our personal worth and trying to get better as people in society. So I agree with what Jordan has to say.
But it's not, I wasn't specifically aiming this message at young men to begin with. It just kind of turned out that way.
And it's mostly, you admit, it's mostly men listening. I mean, 90% of the audience is a male,
Well, it's
right?
about 80% on YouTube, which is YouTube is a male domain primarily. So it's hard to tell how much of it is because YouTube is male and how much of it is because of what I'm saying.
Okay.
But what I've been telling young men is that there's an actual reason why they need to grow up, which is that they have something to offer. Doing so is where you find the meaning that sustains you in life.
So what's gone wrong then?
Oh God, all sorts.
I do want to say again, like, I really do think that there are people out there that have so much potential, especially men and women, and because of the situation that they had, growing up, whether it be, traumatic events, but not being able to realize, like, I want to do better for myself. And for some people, that's a very difficult thing to do. But I think what he is really getting at here is, as people, what can we do to help society and to help our family, to help others? Like, if you're at home all day playing video games, like, what are you really doing for society, as opposed to, you know, maybe someone who helps out in their community, helps out, you know, in their church, is trying to, you know, make a better life for themselves, right? Like you have to look at like what is the value of something that you're doing in the moment.
Of things have gone wrong. I don't think that young men hear words of encouragement. Some of them never in their entire lives, as far as I can tell. That's what they tell me. And the fact that the words that I've been speaking, the YouTube lectures that I've done and put online, for example, have had such a dramatic impact is an indication that young men are starving for this sort of message.
It's true.
Like, why in the world would they have to derive it from a lecture on YouTube? No, they're not being taught that it's important to develop yourself.
But does it bother you that your audience is predominantly male? So
this is where I get a little bit annoyed with, and I know what she's trying to do is she's trying to bait him into something. I feel like when someone is sharing a point, especially during an interview, you shouldn't just automatically jump to the next thing. Like you clearly can tell she wasn't really caring for what he had to say. It was just immediately like, oh, but why men, right? I don't like that, how media is always trying to come at someone for a certain angle, you know? Like, why don't try to discover the truth and discover what is actually beneficial for people, you know?
Isn't that a bit divisive?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's no more divisive than the fact that YouTube is primarily male and Tumblr is primarily female.
Isn't it?
Tumblr is primarily female.
But you're just saying that's the way it is.
Well, I'm not saying anything. It's just an observation that's the way it is. There's plenty of women that are watching my lectures and coming to my talks and buying my books. It's just that the majority of them happen to be men.
Nice.
What's in it for the women, though?
Oh, my.
Well, what sort of partner do you want? Do you want an overgrown child? Or do you want someone
and she does not like him.
And
so you're saying women have some sort of duty to sort of help fix the crisis of masculinity?
Well, it depends on what they want. No, I mean, it's exactly how I laid it out. Like, women deeply want men who are competent and powerful. And I don't mean power in that they can exert tyrannical control over others. That's not power. That's just corruption.
Yeah.
Power is competence. And why in the world would you not want a competent partner? Well, I know why.
I can already guess where she's going to go with this, but I get what he's saying. I feel like even for a woman as well, you want a partner, and even for a man, like you want a partner who is a competent person that is going to be beneficial not only in your relationship, but you can both work together to become better people. And if you're going to have a partner that clearly has a lot of work to do, they're really not going to be a good partner for you, you know? And I can already tell what she's going to be, what the narrative that she's trying to make is that, you know, he is trying to preach that men should have more power over women, and that's not what he's saying.
Actually, you can't dominate a competent partner.
So
if you want domination,
want to dominate, is that what you're saying?
No, I'd say women who have had their
she knows what she's doing.
Their relationships with men impaired, and who are afraid of such relationships will settle for a weak partner because they can dominate them. But it's a suboptimal solution.
Do you think that's what a lot of women are doing?
I think there's a substantial minority of women who do that. And I think it's very bad for them. They're very unhappy. It's very bad for their partners, although their partners get the advantage of not having to take any responsibility.
Wow.
But what gives you the right to say that? I mean, maybe that's how women want their relationships.
Because he's a world-renowned psychologist. He's written many books. What makes you qualified to question what he's saying? You know, like, that's the thing. You could argue, you know, why would I be qualified to say that, right? That's a valid point. But someone who has spent years studying, speaking to some of the most brilliant minds, and especially him as well, to question that, I think is insane. And I just don't have respect for these people that do interviews and just have this narrative of immediately trying to attack the person that they're talking to, you know?
As women, I mean, you're making these vast generalizations.
It's not general.
I'm a clinical psychologist.
But you're saying you've done your research and women are unhappy dominating men.
Oh my God.
I didn't say they were unhappy dominating men. I said it was a bad long-term solution.
Okay, you said it was making them miserable.
Get wrecked. Get wrecked.
I mean, there's intense pleasure in momentary domination. That's why people do it all the time. but it's no formula for a successful long-term relationship. That's reciprocal, right? Any long-term relationship is reciprocal, virtually by definition. So
let me put a quote to you from the book, where you say there are whole disciplines in universities forthrightly hostile towards men. These are the areas of study dominated.
There's multiple reasons for that. One of them is gender, but it's not the only reason. Like if you're a social scientist,
I wonder what he has to say.
Worth your salt, you never do a univariate analysis. Like you say, well, women in aggregate are paid less than men. Okay, well, then we break it down by age, we break it down by occupation, we break it down by interest, we break it down by personality.
But you're saying basically it doesn't matter if women aren't getting to the top, because that's what's skewing that gender pay gap, isn't it? You're saying, well, that's just a fact of life. Women aren't necessarily going to get to the top.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't matter either.
You're saying it's a fact
there are
of
multiple reasons for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those reasons, why?
What I think is, I do think there definitely is a history of women not being paid, the same as men. But what I will say is I do think if you are going to do an analysis to figure that out, I think there are a lot of factors as what he is saying. Like, I don't think you can just assume that it's only a gender thing. I think you have to look at qualification, all of these different factors. And if you can honestly say as a company that, a woman who has the same exact experience as a man is not being paid the same, then I think that's a valid conversation, an argument to make. But at the same time, I don't think you can just assume that it's just a gender thing. So I get where he's coming from, and I think that the narrative, of course, is that he is only about white men, that he's only about masculinity. That's like what he is all about. And I don't personally agree with her viewpoint, but we're gonna fast forward a little bit because this is a long video.
Healthy, and they're willing to work 70 or 80 hours a week, non-stop, specialized at one thing to get to the top.
So you're saying women are just more sensible. They don't want that because it's not a nice life.
I'm saying that's part of it, definitely. And so I work. So
you don't think there are barriers in their way that prevent them getting to the top?
Oh, there are some barriers. Yeah, like men, for example. I mean, to get to the top of any organization is an incredibly competitive enterprise, and the men that you're competing with are simply not going to roll over and say, "Please take the position."
No.
So let me come back to my question.
Absolute all-out warfare.
Is gender equality a myth?
I don't know what you mean by the question. Men and women aren't the same, and they won't be the same.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they can't be treated fairly.
Is gender equality desirable?
If it means equality of outcome, then almost certainly it's undesirable. That's already been demonstrated.
It's just every question that she's asking, you clearly can tell that she is baiting him and wanting him to say something but he's too smart, and I think he is speaking truth. I think, men and women are not the same. They're not. There's different there's different traits, all those physiological, mentally, developmentally, all those different things. And what I feel like is that's not saying that they shouldn't be treated equally, right? That's not what he's saying. Or that is what he's saying is that they should be treated equally, but you have to understand that men and women are different. And she clearly, I feel like, is again just baiting him to say something, which is just, it's horrible. Horrible.
In Scandinavia. Because in Scandinavia...
What do you mean by that? Equality of outcome is undesirable.
Well, men and women won't sort themselves into the same categories if you leave them alone to do it off their own accord. We've already seen that in Scandinavia. It's 20 to 1 female nurses to male, something like that. It might not be quite that extreme, and approximately the same male engineers to female engineers. And that's a consequence of the free choice of men and women in the societies that have gone farther than any other societies to make gender equality the purpose of the law. Those are ineradicable differences.
Wow.
You can eradicate them with tremendous social pressure and tyranny, but if you leave men and women to make their own choices, you will not.
I just have to stop for a sec. Imagine asking Jordan Peterson to come on and intentionally trying to bait him and get him in trouble and make him look like he's someone that is insane when he is speaking with so much composure and, intellect. Like, I would be so embarrassed if I was her, just sitting there. There is a moment that someone told me about that I think things get pretty interesting. So I think it's around this right here.
And this is, you got in trouble for refusing to call trans men and women by their preferred personal pronouns.
No, that's not actually true. I got in trouble because I said I would not follow the compelled speech dictates of the federal and provincial government. I actually never got in trouble for not calling anyone anything.
Right.
That didn't happen.
You wouldn't follow the change of law, which was designed
Not
to
once it was
outlaw
law.
discrimination.
No.
Well,
that's what they said it was designed to do.
Okay.
Wow.
You cited freedom of speech in that. Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
What?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Wow.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm very glad that I have exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
And that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
Wow.
Except you haven't.
So that was very well put. You know, I think if you don't know too much about the situation, I don't know all the facts that go into it. I believe what was going on was that in Canada, they were essentially trying to force professors to call people by their preferred pronouns, and he fought against that. And I think what it boils down to is freedom of speech. I think it's more of the concept of not being like having to be forced by a government to say like you need to say this or that, which I personally agree with. Now, if there's a transgender person that goes by, I don't know, Adam, I'm not going to be like, no, I'm not going to call you that. Because to me, like, what is that doesn't change my life, right? But what she's trying to do here clearly is make it seem like he is, you know, against all that and is an evil person, and he put it out right. I mean, this entire interview, I would be very uncomfortable with a lot of the questions that she's asking, and she's doing the same thing that she's talking about and saying that it's wrong.
And
got him.
I'm just trying to work that out.
Got him.
Gotcha.
You have got me. I'm trying to work
About
that through in
time.
my head. Yeah. It took a while.
It did.
Wow.
It took a while. You have voluntarily come into this studio and agreed to be questioned.
Mm-hmm.
A trans person in your class has come to your class and said they want to be called
That's never happened. And I would call them she.
So you would. So you've kind of changed your tune on that.
No, I said that right from the beginning. What I said at the beginning was that I was not going to cede the linguistic territory to radical leftists, regardless of whether or not it was put in law. That's what I said. And then the people who came after me said, oh, you must be transphobic and you'd mistreat a student in your class. It's like, I never mistreated a student in my class. I'm not transphobic, and that isn't what I said.
Wow.
Well, except you've also called trans campaigners authoritarian, haven't you? I mean, isn't that
Well, only in the broader context of my claims that radical leftist ideologues are authoritarian, which they are.
You're saying someone who...
So, you know, I could keep going with this video. You know, what do I think about Jordan Peterson? I think he is incredibly influential in the sense that I don't think only for men, but I think for people in general to seek, you know, a better life and a better life for the community around them, for society. I also think seeking truth is incredibly powerful, and I think it resonates a lot with what he says and what he represents. I think Jordan Peterson truly is someone that is out there that is trying to do good for this world. Now, whether you agree or disagree, I personally believe that. I think that the work that he is doing is very powerful. He also currently is creating a online university where people can pay for the cost that is way cheaper than, you know, going to an actual school, and it's accredited, and yeah, I mean, you know, he's doing everything right. It's sad that there are people like this woman who are trying to make someone seem like they're evil and they're not a good person. And, you know, I understand it's an interview, you clearly are trying to do something, but you should have done your research and known that someone like Jordan is a very composed, very intellectually, you know, and just a very profound person. And clearly, you can see in this interview, he did a very good job answering all the questions in a very respectful way, but also standing his ground. So please let me know what you think about Jordan Peterson. Do you support him? Do you not like him? Let me know down in the comments below. And what should I react to next? Because this is honestly a pretty important topic, and I enjoy, speaking on stuff like this. So thank you guys. Peace out. Bye.